So the Maven team can take a sigh of relief that this will be recorded. That's recently happened where some people forgot to record it. Yeah, so I'm really excited for this session today, everybody. My name is Ben Erez. I am one of the Maven instructors for a course that's focused on product sense and analytical thinking interviews. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. And I'm just focused a lot these days on creating as much value as possible for people in the job market and helping them access resources and advice that might not be publicly and readily available. So while we're not going to talk about anything confidential on this lightning lesson today, hopefully you'll get some really good tips and actionable advice from the panelists. So some housekeeping before we get started, and you'll get a chance to meet the panelists and hear a little bit more from them about their backgrounds. Just some housekeeping. I do see a lot of people dropping LinkedIn's in the chat. Generally, we're going to ask people to not do that for this session, please, just so we can stay focused on the questions that are being asked in the chat. So given that this is a panel, I'll be keeping my eyes on the chat. No worries, don't apologize. But let's just try to keep it focused on questions, please. And without further ado, we're going to get started. All right, so let me just pull up some slides. And this we will not be looking at slides for the majority of our time together, but I do think it's helpful to have a shared understanding of just how we're going to spend our time together. All right. Let's get this live. All right, Stephanie, could you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing these slides? Awesome. Cool. So welcome to our session, everybody. Today we're going to talk about how top companies like Duolingo, Stripe, and LTK are evaluating product management candidates in 2025. As I mentioned, just a little bit of housekeeping. So we're going to record this. So if you have to drop, you get distracted, whatever's going on, this will be emailed to you after the fact. For those of you just watching the recording, thanks for making time. Please turn off your video if you prefer. We're not really going to this isn't going to be like super interactive until we get to the Q&A section, and even that will be mostly in the chat, so no need to be on video. These panels usually fly by, so don't expect to absorb all the content immediately. You can always watch it again later. And then we will be keeping everyone else in the audience muted by default so that there's no audio interruptions. So please respect that. As far as the agenda goes, so we're going to start by doing some quick intros. We'll have a discussion, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So all of that will be recorded. And that's enough from me to get started. So maybe going from left to right, I'll have our panelists introduce themselves briefly for the audience. So Nikki, do you want to go first?
Yeah, you got it. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Skarstead. I am a director of product at Duolingo currently. I've been at the company for almost 4 years, which is what is time. And today I'm what is called an area lead inside of Duolingo's organization for Duolingo for Math. So I'm helping Duolingo figure out how we teach math in addition to languages, which has been super fun. And while I've been at the company, I've hired and been on, oh God, I probably have done, honestly, like 1,000 interviews at this point. I probably could find that number, and I should. And so have been deeply steeped in our interview process. And then before I was at Duolingo, I worked in consumer tech roles for about 15 years. I was at Airbnb, and I worked on Airbnb experiences. And before that, I was at Etsy. And so I've been hiring in a few different product organizations. And yeah, that's me. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Stephanie, and thank you for being here, Nikki. Stephanie, you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. Hey, everyone. I am Stephanie Neal. I'm currently a head of product at Stripe. I actually only joined about 1.5 years ago, so January 2024. And I'm currently over the tax product portfolio, which is a couple of tax properties. I know tax doesn't sound like the sexiest thing, but it is pretty amazing working on something that is so painful for people, right? Like they'll be like, take my money, just I don't want to think about taxes. So that is a pretty incredible product opportunity, frankly. Prior to Stripe, I was at Amazon working on their Twitch property. I was at United States Digital Service pre-Doge. And then prior to that, just a bunch of different sort of like tech conglomerates working on internet properties. Yeah, sort of similar to Nikki, definitely reviewed definitely thousands of resumes, and interviewed, I'd say, hundreds of people just over the course of my career. So very excited to be here with you all today, shedding some light on what it's like interviewing at Stripe.
Thanks, Stephanie. And Chantal, you want to round us out?
Absolutely. All right, my name is Chantal Cox, and I'm currently head of product at LTK. For those of you who do not know LTK, it's a social commerce platform with 40 million shoppers, almost 500,000 creators. And what we do is we help creators make money through commissionable links and brand partnerships. I'm currently overseeing both creator core product and creator growth, which is really a lot of fun because being able to mix the two together is, I think, very powerful with product-led growth. Prior to that, I was at Amazon with Stephanie, actually, so really excited to be sharing this panel moment with her. I work on creative products, and I was also at Meta on Instagram looking for product organizations working with creators, our 50 million creators, and messaging as well as notifications. I've been like Stephanie and Nikki around the block for about 15 years, working the big, tech companies, the Amazons, Meta, eBay, Microsoft, but also hyper growth startups. I was part of the acquisition from Credit Karma to Intuit. So building those credit card matching products. So as well, not super sexy, maybe to Stephanie's point with the tax, but actually very useful. Yeah, I've been around for 15 years and I've been reviewing, hundreds of resumes. I built my team from the ground up and hired a ton on Instagram as well. So I think I have definitely a few tips to share today.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. This is going to be fun. So the way I'm about to stop sharing my screen in a moment, but I just wanted to let everyone know how we're going to structure our time together. So we're basically going to start with a brief overview of each of the panelists will provide a brief overview of how their companies just interview. We're going to focus primarily on individual contributor PMs today, but if there's anything they want to add about leadership tracks or management tracks, they can do that, but just high level overview. And then we're going to go around the horn and each panelist is going to provide some insights on kind of like the top of the funnel. So things that stand out at the resume review stage these days, especially calling out things that might be different now than they used to be a couple years ago. Then we'll talk about things they look for in hiring manager screens. So once someone gets, through that resume shuffle and they talk to the hiring manager, what really differentiates like strong candidates that get brought on site versus the ones that may be in the process there. And then when doing debriefs on candidates after the on-site, what are the signals that really scream like we should give this person a job offer? So I'm excited to dive into that. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we have our panelists, I think called spotlighted in Zoom. So everyone should be seeing all the panelists. And if you ever forget which company we're talking about, just look at the name of the panelist and you'll see which company they are representing. So with that, I think we'll kick it off with who did the intros first? Nikki. So maybe we'll just start with reverse order and then I'm going to call popcorn and we'll just kind of rotate the order in which the panelists talk. But maybe I think Chantal, you went last on the last part. So maybe you can go first now. So I'd love to hear if you could maybe walk us through the broad strokes of how LTK's PM interview process works from all the way from application reviews to offer stage.
Absolutely. So the first thing is, it's going to be pretty common across, I think a lot of startups. There's going to be an application, a referral. So that's where it starts. Then you have a call with a recruiter that's going to screen you. I have actually prepared a few questions and align with that recruiter on what I'm looking for that specific role. And then if that goes well, there would be a hiring manager call. I take most of those, but sometimes my peer, another director, would actually cover for me. If that goes well, we'll have a full loop. One thing I would say is I have added, because of the shift right now with AI tools, a new format that I want to talk about, which is you have to talk about a feature that you would like, but also maybe improve it with an AI tool and explain the why and what data and hypothesis. So it's a little bit of a case study, but really open-ended and see what you can do. And then after that, obviously a full panel of interviews looking for different signals depending on the role and the level. And then if that goes well, we'll wrap up with a couple of leadership calls. And if that goes well, we'll extend an offer.
Great. And do you have is there a general like time that LTK aims to kind of walk people through that process on the happy path?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say is I try to group all my interviews or the people that we are sourcing around the same time, because you don't want to you don't want to leave a candidate hanging for too long of like, hey, wait, we have to wait 3 weeks, right? And another thing I would say as well is the make sure that the people who apply actually have the right role requirements, I would say, that you meet the role. So that would expedite, I think, the process as well of creating that first interview, I would say, flow. So that is one thing that I'm looking for as well, making sure that we have the right candidates all grouped together, I would say, around the same time period.
Awesome. Before we go to the next panelist, because we'll dive into each of those stages as we get into the next round of questions. But one thing I'll call out for people in the audience is that this is definitely a pattern I'm seeing where companies are choosing to like create these batches of candidates that they want to put through the process. So understanding that it's not on this like ongoing continuous basis, I think is very helpful from a candidate experience and expectations perspective. Cool. I think who went in the middle last time, was it Stephanie? Yeah, would love to hear more about Stripe.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to a lot of what Chantal said, and honestly, like Amazon and United States Digital Service and Stripe, they're all so roughly similar in terms of process. But first we start with a business case for like why we need this role. So that really anchors everything. Like, what's the problem this PM will solve, and what's the impact we expect from hiring them. Once that's approved, I build out the job description, we get that posted, and then I do a warm handoff with recruiting in terms of like, I get assigned a recruiter, which is always important. And then I sit with them and I highlight like specifically for this role, this is the shape of PM that we need, and these are the signals that I'd love for you to screen resumes and during your conversations to keep these in mind and really evaluate folks on. And then generally the recruiter will screen resumes for basics like years of experience, location, any red flags, like a bunch of short stints, stuff like that. And then I get a short list of resumes and I review primarily for accomplishment fit. So how the resume might fit the job description that I put out there that I'm looking for. Basically, do I believe that this person could drive the kind of outcomes that we care about? And by the way, I need to do this really quickly because it's like a lot of resumes. So the more, if you've ever heard of like the 3-second test, like for your product, like try that for your resume, like have, anyone read it for like, I don't know, 5 seconds and say, or 10 seconds maybe, and say like, okay, what do I sound like as a person? Like, what are your takeaways? So you want it to be really readable. And then, yeah, from there, we then move to the loop. One interesting thing actually about Stripe that they recently changed was it used to be just the full loop. So like product sense, execution, the technical, like everything together. But they realized that a lot of candidates would like do well on most of the interviews, but then fail out on the product sense topic. So what they did was they actually pulled that forward. So now it goes like recruiter screen, then hiring manager call and product sense. And if you pass that, then you go to the full loop, which I think was a really clever optimization. And then from there, it's the offer debrief. They call it a trope. Actually, I forget what they called it at Amazon, but they had another clever name for it. And yeah, I stay involved throughout the process. So
thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, I'll jump in because Duolingo sounds very similar to that actually. So it's effectively 4 rounds. The first is resume screen. I actually am the person that's reviewing resumes. People always are like, there's a bot that does it. It's actually me. I spend probably 30 seconds on a resume, maybe no more, because we will get thousands of resumes per open role. And so going back to Stephanie's point earlier about just like really trying to get a couple of punch points on there that you are making stand out, because people for sure are not reading every word on your resume. And then it'll go through, our recruiter will take the first call and ask a series of questions. If you make it to the next round, you will land in my inbox. So it's called our hiring manager screen. I will also ask some questions. And then we did something similar with our product sense interview. We now have a product presentation, which is the next round. And so what that looks like is we basically have you design a feature that moves a metric, and we give you a structured prompt that everybody does the same exact thing. The only change with that is we are now basically encouraging people. We used to just have them create some high-level designs. We're now encouraging folks to create a prototype because AI prototyping tools are so good. And so you can actually make it interactive. And it's actually, I think it's easier than it was like 6 months ago, which is pretty cool. And so that's the presentation round. And then we will bring people on what we call our on-site. It's actually on Zoom. I don't know why we call it that. But that is 4 more interviews that will kind of hit at analytics. There's a product strategy case. If you're going to be a people manager, there's a people manager interview. And I'm forgetting one. There's one more in there that I'm going to totally blank on. I'll put it in the chat when it comes to me. And that's the final round. And then if you make it through those rounds, then you basically go to a hiring manager or a hiring review meeting where everyone is basically talking about if we should bring you on board. And so all in all, I'd like to say that there's a happy path in terms of timeline. It totally depends on the candidate. We often let candidate leads lead in terms of their own schedules because people are busy and it's hard to schedule like 10 interviews. But that's high level for Duolingo.
Great. So now we have our broad strokes, like the user journey, the happy path for getting a job offer at all 3 companies. So maybe Stephanie, we'll have you take this one first. So as we think about the beginning of that journey, when you're reviewing those resumes, what are some of the things that stand out to you these days? If you had, 10, 20, 30 seconds to review a resume that make you say, I'm excited about this candidate and we should talk to them.
Yeah. So what I'm looking for is fit for this role. So am I seeing the signals that I was like really explicitly putting out there in the JD? Am I seeing that reflected? So have they seen these types of problems? Have they worked with these types of users? Are they highlighting the user impact as well as the business impact? Because as PMs, like those, that we need to hit both, right? What did you own and what changed because of that, basically? So it does need to be very scannable. But the signal that I really care about are like metrics, ownership, and outcomes that you drove. I also actually want to highlight for resumes in particular, I think we kind of touched on referrals, but referrals do help in that like it pretty much guarantees a review. But similarly, like we still look through, we really try to look through every single resume and like get through until we have like a good critical mass. And maybe a bit different than what I heard from, I think, Chantal, but we actually will continually like review resumes and like continue to put people into the pipeline until we have like an offer accept. So I think like obviously for like time optimization, we do try to like group people, but we don't like stop looking at resumes or anything like that just because we have like a healthy pipeline.
Awesome. Stephanie, while I have you, before we keep going, do you have, is more than a 1-page resume a red flag for you at all?
Oh, yes. Yeah, some resume red flags for me would be the use of the term product owner instead of product manager, because those are 2 distinct roles. It would be a lack of metrics. It would be like multi-page resumes, which like I empathize because, I used to work in government, and in government, actually they like you should optimize for having a really long resume, which is a strange thing to begin with. So I get like, and in Europe, CVs might look different. And I do hire globally. So like I empathize, but it is just so much easier when it is 1 page. So maybe it's like a yellow flag because I then have to be like, wait, what's the context here? And then, but please, with AI, you can make it 1 page. Just make sure it's true.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Chantal, did you want to maybe anything to add on your end for what you're looking for in a stack of resumes?
Yes, and I have a lot of pet peeves at the moment. So the first thing I would say is when the LinkedIn doesn't match with the resume. So going back to my tools and what this company said, but I think it's very important that you don't enhance the truth a little too much. So if I go to your LinkedIn, it says you're a senior director, or or like you're a PM level 1, and then your resume, you're a senior director working consumer products, but your LinkedIn, you are not even in consumer products, that is going to be a red flag. So ensure that whatever you're optimizing for on your LinkedIn and your resume match. Another thing is I like to say 1 page on your resume for a decade of work. So if you've, obviously you've worked for 20 years, maybe 1 page is not too much, And I like to see like 3 or 4 bullet points on the most recent experiences and the less volume as you go back in time. So that's usually how I like to see it. I also think that a great resume that can actually like show me the information I need is going to tell me a lot about the PM. Like actually your resume is a lot more than a resume, right? If you're not able to articulate in a crisp manner and show the right information, that's telling me actually you do not know how to prioritize. You do not know how to maybe explain things in a clear, crisp way. You know what I mean? So your resume is saying a lot more than you think. Similarly to Stephanie, I don't spend more like 30 seconds. Usually what I like to see is when there's that soft introduction, if there's someone who refers me, the why you want to join. Why are you a fit? So if you get introduced, instead of being like, okay, here's my resume, thank you for the intro, I would say use that moment to do your quick, what I call the cover letter 2.0. Can you just give me 3 bullet points of why I should hire you? Right. So I have worked, like if I'm looking for a messaging AI role, right? I've worked an AI messaging role. Actually, this is the link of the prototype. Here's the article on TechCrunch about it. And then, I've managed 3 people. Great, because this person needs to manage, right? So tell me in 30 seconds before I even open your resume, give me that appetizer in the restaurant, kind of like that first snack. So that is one thing I would recommend. And I cannot empathize enough in this market, the referrals matter a lot. So network before you need it. Start talking to people, start showing interest, comment on their posts on LinkedIn, whatever it is that you need to do to create a networking opportunity for you, start doing that now, not when you're job hunting. So whenever you job hunting, you actually have connections and you can ask someone to refer you. Because to Nikki's point, we have 1,000, 2,000 applications, and it's very hard to stand out. It is not just the quality of the resume. And the last thing I would say is whenever the job description opens, apply quickly. I know it's hard and there's a lot of applications, but unfortunately, I may not have time with a recruiter to go through 3,000. The energy goes down as you go through more and more resumes. So actually those referrals or really applying early will be a great thing for you.
Awesome. I love it. Nikki, what are you looking for in some resumes?
Yeah, so I think all of both of what panelists just said is really good advice, honestly. I also prefer a one-page resume because I think it forces brevity and it forces you to be really succinct and only say the things that are the most important things. And I think there is a good litmus test you can give yourself when you're creating your resume, and it's like I call them the MITs, the most important things. And you don't know every detail that you did in your job, like doesn't matter. You're going to pull out the things that are the most relevant and that matter for the role that you're applying for. Some of the things I look for and I love to see are, I like metrics. Like if you drove impact or if you made a business impact, putting that on your resume really stands out to me. And so just being really clear about the impact you drove when you worked on a thing. Also, I want to know exactly like the product surface that you worked on. People like, this is maybe my red flag or pet peeve on a resume is they'll be like product owner who managed multi teams across multiple surfaces. And I'm like, what did you do? I don't even know what that means. And so maybe there's a test where you run it by your mom, and if she doesn't understand what you put on there, like I'm not going to understand it either. And so just keeping it really simple. Also using ChatGPT is really good at giving feedback on these types of things. Upload your resume and be like, I'm applying for this job at Duolingo. Here's what they say is important. How would you tweak this resume to make it more relevant? And then maybe add a line that says like, it still needs to be true. You need to make sure don't lie. You don't want to over embellish because you still got to do the job if you get hired. But ChatGPT can give you really good feedback. And it's just a really tight way to just, again, you just really want to boil it down to like, what is the most relevant, most important? And then when I'm looking at 1,000 resumes, how does that make yours stand out? And it actually, I think it makes a huge difference. And also just is a tool that shows me how you communicate. And so I think being really good at just kind of getting to your solid punch points makes a huge difference. And then I just want to plug referrals too. I agree that like starting to work on your network, especially if you're early in career, it pays off in spades later on. And so that can be just like if you're at a job today, it's just getting to know the people you work with. So when they go on to other things, you have a connection you can keep. Or it can be doing things like, meeting people on LinkedIn, posting on people's posts, saying hello. At this point on LinkedIn, I get probably, I don't know, maybe like 30 or 40 requests a day. And so I'm not really in my DMs, but I do definitely engage with people when they post on the content that I create. So I think that's an easy way to just kind of get your name out there. But yeah, that's it for me. That's a lot.
And Nikki, just to confirm, are you always looking at the LinkedIn's alongside the resumes, or is the resume basically the main thing you look at?
When people apply typically and they come in through our application process, it's resume that gets pulled out. I think when we also do a lot of sourcing, meaning our recruiters will go out and they'll find people on LinkedIn and talk to folks. And so when those people come to us, typically that's through a LinkedIn profile. And I think, LinkedIn is basically just your resume, but like in LinkedIn format. And so making them be as close as possible, I think makes a ton of sense.
Totally. Great. That's awesome. Let's keep going. I think we've got two more big sections to cover. So I think the next section I want to talk about is let's imagine someone gets through the resume screening phase. So they've done the right things, no red flags triggered. We decide to bring them on for a conversation with the hiring manager. What are the things you touched on them a little bit, but let's go a bit deeper and double click. Like, what are the things you look for in that hiring manager call that that allow you to get excited and say we should bring this person to the onsite? And maybe Nikki, maybe you'll go first, and then we'll have maybe Stephanie and Chantal.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm asking a number of different questions and just like really picking at their experience to make sure that it's relevant. Another thing to think about is if you are applying for a job and your experience is it literally does not meet the requirements, don't do that. Like we put the requirements out there as it's an important filter because that's truly what we're looking for. And so I like to make sure and just confirm that people actually are going to meet the requirements. So I spend a lot of time on that. Another thing that I've been asking is just kind of probing with people a little about how they're learning and using AI. We are starting to use AI more in our development process and just like the ways in which we work. And so making sure people are like at least curious. They don't need to be proficient yet because none of us really are. But I think that's been a change for me too, to just make sure people are learning and they know what's going on. And so I ask those questions too. And then I think the biggest things for me is I'm just kind of trying to make sure that like if we're going to bring you on fully for an onsite, it's worth your time and it's worth our time. So again, it's just picking at your requirements, like, are you actually going to be able to come in and do the job? And then just honestly, some of it's just also just getting to know you. Like why are you interested in Duolingo? Another thing that I look for that you would be surprised at how few people do this, this is a red flag for Nikki, is if I will say Duolingo, I'm hiring Duolingo for math, right? Where you would be working on Duolingo's math product, and then you do not try Duolingo's math product and you can say nothing about it. Don't do that. Like just try it. It takes 4 minutes and it's free. And I know that's harder if you're trying to work for like a B2B company or a SaaS company. Like it's a little bit harder to try the product. But Duolingo, it's free and it's easy to download. So do that and then have an opinion on it because then we can talk about it and then I'm going to be excited about our conversation and I'm going to advance you to the next step.
Incredible. Thank you. I forget who I said goes next, but I see Stephanie unmuted, so you can
Oh
go.
yeah, I think I was the middle. I'm a middle.
Okay.
Always jumping right in the middle. Okay, cool. So mine is really, I guess similar actually to what Nikki was saying. It's really calibrating against basically the job description, making sure that this person can sort of like tick the critical boxes. I'm also starting to like calibrate a bit for level. Because sometimes it can be hard to discern from resumes and titles alone. And generally like getting signal on like team fit. Could I see this person like being successful here in this group? And like this exact seat I'm hiring for, basically, like how well do they fit that? I very much appreciate when people, so at Stripe in particular, actually friction logging, we call it, is a common practice that we all do on, I mean, candidly, some weeks it's like a daily practice, but where you go through and you use the product and you note things that strike you as suboptimal from a user experience perspective. So that is delightful when candidates have already started messing around with the product and have opinions. Yeah, and then folks who, another thing that I also believe is important, especially working in like a highly regulated space like tax and some of my previous roles, is sort of an understanding of like how people learn complex and complicated areas, basically. Like, so what is their approach to sort of like if you don't have to be a tax expert to join the team. In fact, like I think none of my PMs and myself included, none of us are. But it's more like, how do you go deep and how do you learn a space that's like really broad and really deep? And and then lastly, sometimes I will kind of try to feel out. I'll ask like, describe to me like, what you love about product management, and then describe to me what you absolutely hate about product management. And like different companies might hit on different notes, right? And so if I hear someone describe like, everything, the things they hate about product management, I'm like, oh, well, like we are a really intense culture, and work-life balance isn't, always the best here, whichever or whatever it is, right? Then that helps me just kind of understand, like, is this person really going to be happy, taking this role or whatever it is.
Super helpful. Chantal, you want to round out this question, then we'll do our final question and open up for Q&A.
Yeah, a lot of great things. I actually love the thinking deep. Stephanie, me and Ben were talking about the 0 day. Like it's a very important thing. How do you go into unpacking complex things and how do you learn is very important. A couple of things for me. Genuine curiosity in the product. Going back to what Nikki said, but honestly, it's crazy how many people are like, I would love to work at LTK. And you're like, okay, so what is your favorite feature in the product? Or like, tell me more about like, or they don't ask any questions. Like at the end, I always leave 5 to 10 minutes for questions. And they generally ask me questions about what is your AI policy governance? And I'm like, okay, do you not have questions about the team or the product? So that is usually kind of a red flag for me actually. Like ask me about what the role, like what are the challenges in the role? Like ask me about what are some of the potential risks of working on this, or the challenges that I may encounter, right? So that is very important. Culture. So if this person's communication style does not align with how we communicate, or they're just like too aggressive, or that will be a thing that I'll be calibrating and looking at as well as your communication. Like while I do think that there's levels, I'm always looking for someone who can communicate clearly. I think I have too many examples of candidates I talk to, and I'm trying to take notes, and I would love to hear actually from Nikki and Stephanie in this, but I'm trying to take note into like, give me an example on a feature that you launch, for example. And for lead PM, I'm asking about like, how did you decide this was the right thing to build? So walk me through that like upper funnel in the decision process. And I don't understand what they're saying. Like I can't take notes. Like I'm like, so what is the feature? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Like, and why was this a problem worth solving for? Like, what is the data behind it? Or like, why this versus something else? And I'm just poking at it gently, and I'm like, it's breaking apart. And I'm like, that's, but so many of those examples happen. So I would think, make sure that, when you're talking about an experience, that you really are clear, articulate, and you actually like, if it's for a lead PM or staff PM or principal PM, you need to be able to explain that, right? Like I chose this feature, or like I chose this problem, and this is why this problem was worth solving for, and this was the goal, and this is how I would measure it, and this is what I did about, right? That is like it seems so simple. And I actually say that in an interview. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna ask you in 2 minutes after the introduction about a feature, and I want you to walk me through like your decision process. I'm like, why did you decide this was worth building? And what's the problem? And literally structure it for them. And like 90% of the people do not do this well. So I just want to reiterate how important that is, especially for more senior roles.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Stephanie, because you keep getting middled, you're going to go first for this final question. I have not been middling you intentionally, I promise. Okay, so for our final question here for the panel, and just a quick reminder to those participating, please just keep the chat to questions that things that you would like to hear from the panelists, because there's a lot to keep track of. So thank you for that. No LinkedIn's, no general fun topics. Have fun, just not here. Okay, so I would say for the last question, so let's say we have a candidate, Stephanie, passes the resume screen, passes the hiring manager screen. We bring them on site. You're in the room with whoever the panel is that maybe interviewed the candidate, doing a debrief. What are the signals that you really are trying to be sensitive and listen for that tell you there could be something really special about this person and we should extend an offer?
Yeah. So I'm generally looking for a candidate to spike in at least a couple of the spaces. Generally, and this depends somewhat on like the shape of PM, right? If I'm hiring a platform PM, like ideally they spike on the technical acumen interview. If I'm hiring someone who's doing very like customer facing work, obviously, like I'd love to see them spike on product sense. But I would rather have a candidate who is like sufficient, generally sufficient, but then has like a couple of spikes, versus someone who's like just just like uniformly sufficient, if that makes sense. Um, and it generally like aligns to like the type of PM that I'm looking to hire. I'm also really listening for flags. So, were they rude? Did they seem to be using, an LLM on the side for answers? Other sort of just concerns. Was communication poor? Did they use, this is a big one actually, did they use the same examples over and over? Because then once you all get together, you realize like, oh, like they had one shining moment and then they're sort of like, repeating that same story, different angles of it. So you want to make sure to really vary the examples that you use. But yeah, so it's really like I want to see someone potentially spiking on like 1 to 2 areas. And I want to make sure obviously that they passed everywhere sufficiently, and that there were no major red flags from the interviewers. During the tropes or the final loops, the debriefs, I'm also listening for potential bias among the interviewers as well, because we're all humans. And so, I try to make sure like, what do I need to filter out in my final consideration, and like, what actually do I need to take into consideration? But ultimately, it's really like, do they pass the pieces? Do they have structured thinking, clear communication? And are they really like users first? Do they start with the user, with the problem, and then do they tie it back to business impact, just over and over in each of their examples? But yeah, that's my high level.
Awesome. We'll do a coin toss for this one. Nikki, Chantal, whoever unmutes first, you get to go.
Again.
Nikki, it's Nikki.
Yeah. Honestly, what Stephanie just said really resonated with me. It's just, you're looking for people to do a good job on all the interviews. That's why you've created the interview process in the first place. I think we at Duolingo, again, we really care about product sense and people's obsession with product. And I think craft comes up a lot when we're thinking about if we should bring someone onto the team. And so that, comes across in the interviews. And I think that's where we often will get really excited about somebody. They'll either like crush the product presentation, and we're like, that was a really good idea. It was extremely well presented. Or they'll just give us really good product feedback throughout. And that kind of comes up when we're all debriefing and talking about whether or not someone should join the team. So I think those are kind of the big things, but we have basically like, you get a thumbs up or a thumbs down on an interview, and we do not advance you. Like, we will not hire you. I'm trying to think if I can think of one person that we let pass. Basically, you need to pass every interview. And so we have a pretty high bar. And so we just assume that if you've made it through our extremely hard bar or high bar, there's a very good chance that you're going to get an offer, because most people sort of like trip up on 1 or 2 interviews. But that's kind of high level. I'm curious to hear it. Chantal, how does that resonate with LTK?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for what I see in the market is a lot of PMs have become really good at execution, because execution was king in the past, but things have shifted. Now it's about good ideas, good decision making, and still go fast, right? So that's not going away, but those 2 things are very important. Are you creative? Can you think out of the box? Can you connect the dots? Can you think strategically? And actually, can you actually make those decisions in a way that makes sense and is creative? Like, I think those 2 things, and collaborate, right? I think the 3 things cannot be replaced by AI quite yet. And so if you can collaborate well, you can influence, you're data driven and can make decisions, trade-offs, right? And you're really good at this fast, and you're creative, I think you have some serious power in this market. The problem is that 80% of the candidates fall into the last one. They can walk me through. So when I say, hey, tell me about a feature that you built or something, how many times do I have to hear that I built this and I went through the right framework and then we optimized for impact? And we've all been, we've all seen too many times. Like you're not going to stand out, right? Tell me more about actually tell me something that I haven't heard, right? That up front, like up funnel, like, hey, we were going to do this decision, but it doesn't make sense for our users based on the trend that we start noticing in the dashes and dashboards. And then business sense, we're going to that direction. So I connected the dots and I thought, there's an opportunity here. Now, how do I test this fast, right? Then I decided to do an AI prototype and showed it to some users that I talked to in a call. And then they gave me this XYZ feedback, iterated with design. We ran a quick A/B test. And this is the metrics that we were measuring. This is the guardrail. This is what I learned. And maybe it was not successful and it's fine. Also, another thing, if I only hear success stories in a full panel, I'm concerned. I want to actually hear I failed. I don't know, like we run this, my hypothesis was this. It turned out it didn't go that way. And that's what I learned. Like that's power. Like we've all been in tech, and I don't know about Nikki and Stephanie, but I've launched a ton of products that didn't have any impact. But when you fail, you learn. So that's what it's about. So I just don't want to have like, even in a resume, if I only see like everything that I launched, 20% growth, 10% growth, I'm like, no, I don't believe that. I don't buy it. So just be real. And then also in the interview, I think that it has to feel less of an interview and more of a conversation. Like I want like a great mindset or a tip that I give candidates sometimes is just think about you're already working. Like imagine we're already working together. Like let's not, like I'm not trying to probe, this is not a game, like let's try to get you, like you're trying to get the job. Like, do you even want to work with me? Do I want to work with you? Is this happening? Right. And so when we are having a conversation, if I'm feeling like you're trying to read a prompt or like something or like a star methodology as like, no, like just don't follow only the framework. Just tell me about something so I can understand it. And it makes sense to me. And then I can have a conversation and ask you more questions. But if I ask you more questions and the candidate starts freezing, like, oh my God, she's digging into this or something, that's not good, right? You want to be, hey, great question, Chantal. Yes, we did think about that trade-off. Let me tell you more about it, right? So you want to go into an interview with that energy. That's going to help you tremendously.
Yeah, it's great advice. And I think what I'm hearing is it's all about fit at the end of the day. Like if there's one theme that comes across, I think what I heard from everyone is the process is optimized or designed to make sure that you really do find the people that are most likely to be successful in the role. And that has to do with culture fit, has to do with domain expertise or background in the space. And sure, there's never a perfect process because there's always some false positives that kind of make their way through. But I think that's what these processes do seem designed for. And I think it's also really a good reality check for people in the market to realize like companies can really afford these days to be super picky about who they hire, and they do want someone that's going to be the perfect candidate because they get thousands of resumes. So I think it's important to really market yourself in a way that attracts the people that want people like you. Versus trying to appeal to everybody. Cool, that was awesome. All right, so a few quick things and we'll talk about some of the questions from the Q&A. Okay, so first off, here we go. Okay, so if you are interested in potentially working at any of these companies, I'm not going to ask each of them to go around and promote their companies because they just kind of did. But I'll do that. I'll do it for them. So I know Duolingo, Stripe, and LTK are all hiring product managers. I think if you heard things about the respective processes at these companies that make you start getting really excited, and you wrote down during this conversation, like go look at Duolingo's careers page because that sounds for me. Go check out those openings and go apply there. And then I am not a matchmaker, but I would encourage you to follow the advice that was given on how to stand out from a resume perspective and make sure and maybe reach out to people that you know at those companies. If you can get a referral, if they can vouch for you and they've worked with you in the past, I think that's probably the best way to get in the door. In the chance that you're getting ready for big tech company interviews like Meta, Google, companies that do product sense and analytical thinking interviews, the next cohort of my course is launching in less than a week, Tuesday next week. It's designed to help you pass interviews just by being really structured and having a good framework for how you want to work through a case. So I do not teach people how to cheat. I just give you a framework to make sure that all that horsepower goes to good use during the limited time you have together during interviews. So you feel free to check out my course page. Here's a couple quotes from folks that recently participated in my cohort. I feel extremely cringe about promoting myself, but such is life these days. And in the chance that you want to participate in my next cohort and you have your phone around, you can scan this QR code and you will get $100 off my course if you use the promo code Lenny's List. Cool. I'm going to leave this up for about 5 more seconds. And then we are going to go off of screen share and I will ask the panelists to answer a couple of questions that got a lot of upvotes. All right. This will also be in the recording. And you'll get a link to my course at the end in the email. All right. So the first question that I would love to get input about is, I know we talked about this a bit. One of the questions that got like 26 upvotes, I think at the beginning, was how important domain knowledge is. And are generalist PMs kind of like no longer appealing? So whoever has strong opinions about that one, feel free to chime in.
I actually do still think domain knowledge is very important. I think you are at an interesting time though, where if you're trying to get domain experience in a new industry where you do not have it, I would consider that you like use AI to build something and launch it and use that on your resume as a way to break into that industry. I think when you're early career, like a generalist PM is totally okay. But as you continue to get more experience, you're typically, when you're hiring for like an L4, L5 level, is you're looking for somebody that has like consumer experience. And so I would say like, and maybe this is advice for everyone, especially if you're early career, is just teach yourself AI and by launching something. And then you can use that project as a way to be like, yeah, actually I worked at this company, but I also built my own thing. And here's what I learned. And that is now easier than ever. And I think is going to start to become a really great way for people to break into PM generally, if you're not already a PM, or break into new industries if you don't have experience.
+1, everything Nikki said. No notes.
One thing I would say though is, now PMs have the tools to put to life like anything. And so follow your curiosity. Like I feel like a lot of people are just applying to roles. Like when I coach people on the side on intro. So if you're interested, by the way, feel free to look at my LinkedIn on basically your strategy on your finding a role. And I think that most of the people I talk to had do the same mistake. They just blast apply, 50,000 application a day. They track that on a spreadsheet and they get like 10% conversion to first round. And it's very demotivating. I would actually take a completely different approach in this market. Follow your curiosity. When you open startups, like go to Wellfound, which has all the startups. So go to A16Z or other Sequoia website. Look at the portfolio companies and generally look at what they're doing and see what your body is telling you. What are you interested in? What do you want to learn more? Where would you work for free? And then take the product and use the product sense and be like, hey, what's going on here? What are the problems they're trying to solve? What would I do differently? What is the bad decision? And I would even message somebody in the company and be like, hey, I don't think this makes sense to me. Or write a post on LinkedIn about it, tag the CEO. I've done this before. And just publish something, maybe like a link, that about a prototype. So I do think that being a generalist is powerful in this market. You can actually, if you're interested in something new that you've never touched on, you can actually become interesting you can actually be hired for that because of the tools and what I just said.
Awesome. I think this panel could not be complete without spending some time talking about AI. And I think one of the questions that I think I'd be interested in get your thoughts about is, maybe each of you can share one tip or one specific area that you have an opinion about where if you were a candidate in the current job market where you might be leveraging AI the most across like the spectrum of what we discussed, like where do you think AI could be most helpful to candidates in getting success as a candidate, not as a product manager on their current job?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I think that interview prep. Use your LLM as, hey, I'm trying to interview for this position. Dump the JD, dump your resume into the LLM, and then ask, hey, prepare me for this interview. And then it would ask you questions. And then you can even use your voice. Actually, it's even better. You can be on the go. You can be at the gym, actually. You can go on a walk. And you just try to answer questions, prep that way. That is going to be really helpful. The other thing that I had to recommend is for the prototypes and things like that. There's a ton of tools, but they're like, whenever you can even start prototyping on Claude.ai. Actually, you don't even need to go to Cursor and like start simple, right? Be like, I'm actually trying to put something on paper, even take a picture, put in an LLM and be like, hey, make this a prototype or something, and then refine it and ask questions. So if you don't know anything about AI, start there. And then always go back to not just a prototype for ideas. Like one thing I've seen a lot is like some people, yes, knock it out of the park, send me like incredible designs, but I still don't understand what you're trying to solve and why and what metric and how you're measuring this. So yes, for product sense, yes, for prototyping, but not just go crazy, right? And like, as a PM, you're not going to be able to revamp the entire UI. It takes X million resources to do so. So actually making sure the less is more, like why this one thing. So I usually like to see a PM tell me, I actually like made a decision to only change this because of XYZ, but this is all the exploration I did. But this is a decision. And sometimes it's just one button, it's small things, right? And that's what I pay attention to versus a revamp, right? Like, hey, I revamped your app. It's like, great. So that's another thing I would say.
Cool. Thank you. Nikki, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only build there is, again, like you can use AI to teach you AI, and the best way to learn AI is just by building a thing and shipping it. And so there's actually, I saw there's like something called, it's the Idea Browser or something. It's this guy who launched this website where it's just a bunch of free ideas that you can pick one and then build something in the space. And he wants people to make billions of dollars. But this could also be a great place to get a good idea. If you don't have the ideas, build a thing, ship it, get 2 users, even one person, it could be your mom, to use it. And you probably have learned more than you would in an intern job somewhere else. And so I think if you can make time to do that on the side while you're interviewing, and I know that applying for jobs is often a full-time job, but if you can carve out like 20% to also become fluent in AI, I think it'll help you a ton. And it'll just give you more context and be able to, I think you'll just ace your interview because you kind of understand where the entire industry is headed. And then also Chantal said this, but I think voice mode in GPT and just like interviewing with GPT and just talking a lot out loud is just going to help you get really good at that. And then when you actually have your interview, you're going to ace it.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
No, I don't have too much to add because I actually think interviewing, ideation, and then like just building and validating are the best ways to use it these days. Yeah, I did. So yeah, I guess I will say from an interview perspective, like you can tell them like, give me like a 6-week, plan, basically tell me how to be interview ready within 6 weeks for this interview. And it will like break it out and give you prompts and let you coach and everything. So it's like a full plan that you could get from it. But yeah.
Yeah. Also, Stephanie, you mentioned earlier that I think I heard you mention that is it anecdotal that you're hearing some interviewers mention that candidates are using LLMs or using AI during interviews and they're not like hiding that well because it's like obvious to the interviewers? Is that what I heard?
They seem like they're reading and like pausing to type basically. And I've heard that like from a few recruiters. And I asked them, I was like, well, what's the protocol here? Like, how do we assess whether this is how they communicate, or maybe they're looking at their notes, which I think is actually fine, versus like using, AI for responses. And they're like, well, this is starting to happen, but we don't even have a good protocol. We don't know yet.
Can I add?
Chantal, I saw you unmuted. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, because I do think it's very important to what Stephanie is saying, because one thing that happened to me in the past is like we brought candidates to onsite because that was right at the beginning of the LLMS fight, and we were like, wow, this person's killing it. And then at the end of the process, you're like seeing some weird red flags. So this is new things that we've seen. Or like one thing I would say is if you get a job right? And you use LLM and they didn't catch you, but you still have to perform at that job. So it's not in your interest either to overly index on LLMs, even if you kind of go through the process and are able to land there. Because I do think we're in a weird moment where hiring managers, to Stephanie's point, are like, we don't have the protocol yet, and some people may be really good, right? But then if you start a job and are not performing, you'll be out of a job very soon. So that's not good for you either. So I just wanted to say that leverage LLMs, yes, but be careful with how much you rely on that. And then also say I had a couple of calls where it made no sense. Like I had like they were reading, I think, but I was like, what? Like I was like, so what are the levers that you would evaluate? And then they said something, I was like, what? Like it was literally made no sense, and that was automatic decline for me. So if you use LLMs and you actually screw up, just so you know, it's really gonna not be a good thing for you. So just say, be careful.
Yeah. The last question I have here for us, and then we'll wrap, is so there's I know the audience for this session has been primarily kind of individual contributor PMs. I think there's actually a lot of participation on this call from folks in the chat that are either looking to get into product management or maybe are a little earlier in their product career. I'm just curious if you all have any parting advice or any parting thoughts to share with people who are maybe early stage product or early career product managers, or people who are looking to get into product management beyond use AI, build things. I think we covered that point, but if there's anything else that you'd add.
Yeah. Can I just add something? I did a talk at Berkeley not too long ago, and I saw a lot of anxiety from people graduating at the moment, which I can totally empathize with. But I want to turn that anxiety into power. You guys have a unique opportunity to actually teach, to come to an interview and be like, you don't know about Cursor, right? Like most of the people you're going to talk to in a panel or that work in companies right now are working 40 plus hours doing their job. They do not have the time you have to learn at the velocity you can. So you have power. Right now, I have candidates they're teaching me things in an interview. And that's incredible. And that's really powerful. So if you are new, you're graduating, start doing something, take Duolingo, take Stripe, you're like LTK, and just be like, hey, this is what doesn't make sense to me about Duolingo math, right? Like I'm trying to do this math thing, or try to teach that to 1% coaching. This doesn't make sense to me. Nikki, look, this is how I think about it. And here's a prototype, here's what I did. And this is a tool or an agent that actually, I don't know, you know what I mean? And so that is incredible. Nikki would be like, oh, how the hell did he do that, right? At least you're going to get her interest. And that is very powerful.
It also demonstrates interest, right? It just demonstrates like passion about the idea, which is something that people are looking for. Stephanie, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Oh, no, I was just to your question about like transitioning into PM. Probably obviously, yes, like build and like, go to hackathons, like just go get any hands-on experience you can. But apart from that, I would say it's much easier to transition into product within your current company than it is to apply cold. It is much harder to do that, especially if you have like a wealth of experience that doesn't quite translate into product yet. It would be much more akin to like starting over than like transferring within your current company. So if you have that as an option, like go talk to product leaders, like make sure they know you're very interested, like spotlight your relevant skills that would transfer well into product, and like why you're so passionate, so that you're on their mind when they're thinking about their options to hire.
Yeah, I would just to build on that, I was going to say the same thing. I think there are also jobs, like don't be scared to take a job that's a couple steps away from product, knowing that over time you can work your way there. I think like your first few jobs outside of school, mine were horrible, but I learned a ton, and they were not even in tech at all. But they helped me get the skills that I needed to be able to eventually get into tech, to eventually get into product. And so I think just, focus on anything that you think is going to break down the core skills you need to be a product person someday, and figure out where you can get those now, and know that you can eventually kind of lily pad your way there.
Yeah, and then I'll just add one final thought, and then we will conclude, which is you want to design your career, if you're in the scenario, to go where the puck is heading, right? So if you imagine, what is product management going to be in 3 years, or not what is it today, because you're playing career chess, like Nikki and Stephanie were both mentioning. You join a really strong company there's a bunch of headcount growth in a bunch of departments. You join, and then maybe at some point you work your way into product management. The question is, what are the key skills that are going to make you a killer product manager in that world once you make that transition? And I think one of the things I am a big subscriber to is the importance of customer facing conversations and distribution and go to market in an age of AI where it's increasingly easy and fast to build product. So the people that will win and really stand out, I think, are going to be the people that are really good at getting people to care about the product that they're building and to adopt it. So to Chantal's point, she mentioned a few times, what problem are you solving? Get really good at problem discovery, get really good at customer research. So if I had to pick a place to start, it would be some kind of customer facing function, like either customer success, sales, customer support. Even though customer support is arguably getting automated with AI, there will always be humans responsible for customer support programs. So that's where I would personally, and that was actually my entry point into product management, is through the customer support lens.
That was
So
mine too. So same.
And just wanted to add,
Yeah.
like, product careers are not linear, especially now with AI. So I think that if you put an intention to this world that, like, I like to build stuff, you'll get there. Don't be like, you have 20 more years if you're just starting 30 more years ahead. This is one of the things I learned in my career is I was rushing it at the beginning. I was like, I want to climb or I want to do all, but you'll get there. Take your time, actually, like, build the right skills and use that curiosity as a way to learn and keep learning, and you'll get there.
Yeah. Nikki, are you unmuted because you had something to add or just left it
No.
unmuted? Cool. Well, Stephanie, Chantal, and Nikki, thank you so much for being incredible panelists. I'm really excited that this, 900 people at some point were on here, got a chance to listen into this call. Thankfully, not over 1,000 because I had a limit to my Zoom plan. So that's great. And hopefully many more thousands will watch this recording. And a big shout out to Claire from the Maven team for helping us make this panel happen. She's been in my DMs this whole time, just kind of helping me stay sane. So thank you for that, Claire. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Ben. It was awesome. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Al.